Good morning, Year 7. Today we are doing the area of composite figures, which means that we're going to be putting more than one or two shapes together. But before we do that, let's come back and just practice again, one shape at a time, by doing these quick review questions. So these are just three of the different areas, different types of shapes that we have learned. So the first one is a square. The formula for a square is A equals L squared. The length of the square is 4. So we have 4 squared, and 4 squared is 16 millimeters squared. Question 2 is a triangle. The formula for a triangle is A equals half BH. The base and the height will be the 6.8 and the 4.8. Half times 6.8 times 4.8. It doesn't matter if you multiply numbers in a different order. Okay, half times 6.8 times 4.8 is 16.32 meters squared. And the final shape that we have here is a parallelogram, which has the formula A equals BH. Now this question is trying to trick people because it has more measurements than we need. The base and the height should always be connected to the right angle. So the 25 here is the perpendicular height. That would be at right angles to the 50 meters down here, which means the 58, I'm crossing it out because it's just a distraction to try to trick people. So the base and the height will be 50 times 25. 50 times 25 is 1,250 meters squared. Okay, so hopefully that is getting easier and easier because, as I said, now we want to combine those shapes together. So composite figures are made up of more than one simple shape. So the simple shapes being our rectangles, squares, triangles, and parallelograms. The areas of composite figures can be found by adding or subtracting the areas of simple shapes. Now, you need to be able to work out when you're adding and when you are subtracting. What you do is, if you have two shapes next to each other, so say you have a little rectangle across here, and then you have a triangle next to it, then you would need to add those two shapes together to find the area. But if you had a rectangle and you're wanting to cut out of it a little square and you're trying to find this bit of area that was left over in here, then you would need to subtract. Okay, so that's how you remember it. If the two shapes are next to each other, you're going to need to add. If one shape is inside the other, then you're going to have to subtract. Okay, so here are our questions. Number 1, find the area of each of these composite shapes, show full working out. Now I'm going to show you two ways that you could set out your working out. The first method is a slower method, but some people prefer it because it's more familiar to what we've been doing with our other questions. The second method is faster, and I would encourage you to try to work your way towards the second method because it will save you time. Okay, but the first method, when I look at this shape, I can see that there are two shapes. If I chop it down here, I can cut that into a rectangle and a triangle. So I'm going to call this rectangle shape number 1, and the triangle is going to be shape number 2. And I'm going to find the area of each of them, and because they're next to each other, I'm going to add them together to find the total area. Okay, so first of all, before I do that, I need to find some missing measurements. The rectangle has the 5 and the 9, but the triangle, the height here would be 5, the same as the one on the other end of that rectangle. But this little side at the top, I would need to do 12 take away 9, and that means that that side there would be 3. Okay, so now that I know all my sides, shape number 1 is a rectangle. So the formula is A equals BH. The base and the height of my rectangle is 9 times 5, which is equal to 45 meters squared. Shape number 2 is a triangle. The formula for a triangle is half base times height. Okay, so the base and the height is 5 times 3. Half of 5 times 3 is 7.5 meters squared. Okay, so that's calculate each of the areas, and then I want to find the total, and I'm going to add them together. 45 plus 7.5 means that my total area is 52.5 meters squared. Okay, so that's the first method that you can use, but it takes a lot of lines of working out. I'm now going to show you the second method for the next question, which will mean that I can go back to doing the question in 3 lines of working. So what I do to do it in the shorter method is I combine the 2 formulas in the first line. So in this question, I have got around the outside, I have a square. So there will be a square out here that I'm tracing over in green. And then I'm cutting out of that square this triangle. And that way I can find this area in here that I want if I subtract them. So my formula is going to be A for area equals, I'm starting with the square, which has a formula of L squared, and then I want to cut out, which means subtract, the triangle, which is half base times height. Okay, so both of my formulas are in there together, so that's my first line. The second line is I substitute into each of those. So the square has a side length of 6, so it's 6 squared. And then the triangle is minus half the base and the height of the triangle. The base up the top here would be 6, and the height is the 4. So half times 6 times 4. And then the third line, you just type the whole thing in your calculator in one go. So you go 6 squared minus half times 6 times 4, and the answer is 24 centimeters squared. So you can see that method requires much less working out, but you have to be onto it to work out what that first line is going to be by combining the formulas together. So let's try that method again. Question C. We want to find the shaded area, which means I want to start with the outside rectangle, which will be A equals BH for the rectangle, but then I am cutting out the triangle. So I want to subtract a triangle, which is half BH. Okay, so there's my formula. Second line, sub in. The base and the height of my rectangle is the 6 and the 3.8. So 6 times 3.8. Then minus the triangle, which would also have a base of 6 and a height of 3.8. So half times 6 times 3.8 equals, type it in the calculator, 6 times 3.8 times, and then minus half times 6 times 3.8 is 11.4 meters squared. Okay, another one here. This time I would want to cut this shape up, which means I'm going to be adding these 2 pieces together. I have a triangle and it looks almost like a square, but be careful, it is 28 by 25, which means it is technically a rectangle. So adding my formulas together, I'm going to start with my rectangle, which will be BH, and then I'm going to add, because they're next to each other, I'm going to add the triangle, which is half BH. Okay, then subbing in, my rectangle is 28 times 25, and then plus my triangle, the base here would be 25, and the perpendicular height would be the 22. So half times 25 times 22. Type it all in. It's 975 centimeters squared. Okay, so can you now please try exercise 10? And if you have time, there is also exercise 11 that is the same thing. All right, thank you.